No one paid much attention when she walked through the doors of Yamamoto Dojo that evening. She didn't look like someone who belonged there. Her sweatshirt was faded at the elbows, her sneakers more fit for grocery aisles than sparring mats. She moved quietly, shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to disappear into the floor. No one knew her name yet, but they already decided who she was. Nobody. Brad Stevens, the 29-year-old head instructor, barely looked up from his phone. When he finally did, he snorted under his breath. "Lost, ma'am?" he asked, just loud enough for the other students to hear. Tai Chi for seniors is across the street. A few snickers rippled through the room. She paused, offered a small smile. "I saw the flyer. Said beginner's welcome." "You're here to train?" Ashley Monroe, one of the brown belts, raised an eyebrow so high it nearly left her face. "That's adorable." More laughter. Someone muttered. Maybe she thought it was yoga. Still, she said nothing, just stood there, waiting. Brad sighed, waving dismissively. Sure. Grab a uniform and sign the waiver. But don't say I didn't warn you it's full contact tonight." Most people would have walked out, but she nodded. The woman returned a few minutes later in an oversized gi, still wearing that same soft smile. She introduced herself simply, "My name's Claire Bennett." No one heard the quiet shift in the room that happened the moment she stepped onto the mat. Because, in their minds, Claire was a ghost of someone they'd already dismissed, a lonely woman from some quiet job, probably recently divorced, trying to find herself again, not worth their attention. That would change soon. Brad called for sparring drills. 20 students began partnering up in pairs. Claire stood alone, until only one option remained: Ashley Monroe. Ashley rolled her eyes, walking over with all the patience of someone forced to babysit a toddler. "Okay, Grandma," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We'll go slow. No broken hips today, yeah?" Claire chuckled gently. "Appreciated." The drill began. Ashley attacked first, an exaggerated, flashy front kick straight from a movie. Claire reacted a split second too late, or maybe, deliberately, too late. She stumbled back, theatrically unbalanced, and landed on one knee. The room erupted. Brad clapped once, grinning. "All right, folks, that's enough warm-up. Let's give our new guest a proper introduction." He motioned the group into a wide circle. "Claire here wants to learn how to fight. What do you say we show her what that really means?" The circle tightened. 20 students surrounded Claire now, all grinning, all waiting for the moment she'd break. It wasn't enough to laugh at her, they wanted to shatter her. Ashley swaggered forward again. "Don't worry, Claire. You won't feel a thing. Just a little bruised ego." But Claire didn't step back. She didn't flinch. Her hands were loosely at her sides, her eyes focused not wide with fear, but calm, steady. It unsettled Ashley more than she wanted to admit. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Come on, librarian! Show us your inner ninja!" Another said, "You gonna try and hug us into submission?" The mockery was relentless. Then Brad stepped forward. "Tell you what," he said, adjusting his loose belt with dramatic flair. "Let's give you one shot. One clean punch. At me. Don't be shy." Claire looked at him. For a moment, silence blanketed the dojo. The tension was suddenly different, tighter, stranger, as if something unseen had entered the room. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," she said softly. "Oh, I'm sure it's fine," Brad said, grinning. "Come on, one punch. Let's see what you've got." The rest of the students hooted in anticipation. One of them took out their phone, already recording. Claire stepped forward. Her hands were still at her sides. She took a breath. Then she did something that made every person watching freeze. She bowed. A slow, deliberate bow low and respectful, but not submissive, not weak. It was the kind of bow that carried intention. Brad blinked. Okay, are you gonna—" He didn't finish the sentence. Claire straightened up, looked him directly in the eyes, and said, "Are you sure?" Brad laughed nervously. "You've had your chance. Let's go." She sighed. And then nothing happened. At least, it looked like nothing happened. But Brad suddenly jerked back a step, stumbling, his face twisted in confusion. The entire room leaned forward. Had she moved? No one saw the strike, but Brad's feet shifted oddly. His breathing hitched. His hands trembled. Ashley whispered, "What just happened?" Claire stepped back. "Thank you," she said politely. Then she turned and walked off the mat, quietly leaving the circle as if nothing had happened. Brad stood frozen, Wide-eyed, one hand gripped his side. He couldn't catch his breath. Something had collapsed. Not his ribs, maybe, just his ego. But no one knew yet. The whispers began. Did you see that? She didn't even touch him. Is she trained? Brad straightened up, forcing a grin. Lucky shot. All right, that's enough for tonight. Dismissed. The students began to scatter, but more than a few kept their eyes on Claire as she left the dojo alone, silent, and somehow victorious. The dojo was different the next evening. Not louder, not quieter, just different. People noticed when Claire walked in it with laughter this time, but with something closer to curiosity. No one said anything out loud, but the air buzzed with silent questions. Was she just lucky? Or was there more to her than she let on? Claire didn't smile. She didn't avoid their eyes. She simply walked in, bowed respectfully at the door, and moved to the far corner to stretch. Her movements were slow and deliberate, almost meditative. But there was a precision to her stillness that felt intentional, calculated. Brad stood near the front, arms crossed, watching her with narrowed eyes. His side still ached, though he'd told everyone it was a muscle pull. That tiny moment from the night before replayed over and over in his mind, her bow, her breath, the nothing that became something. He didn't like it. All right, let's get to it, he barked, more forcefully than usual. Advanced sparring tonight. Pair up. Again, Claire was left until last. And again, Ashley Monroe groaned dramatically as she walked toward her. Déjà vu, she muttered. Let's try not to take a nap mid-fight this time, okay? Claire gave no answer. They took their positions. Brad didn't even say go this time, he just clapped once. Ashley attacked first, this time with more aggression. A jab-cross roundhouse combination she'd learned from YouTube. Fast, flashy, predictable. Claire moved. Not fast, not frantic. Just moved. She didn't block. She didn't counter. She flowed. Ashley's fist passed through empty air. Her kick hit nothing but momentum. By the third strike, she was already frustrated. By the fifth, she was breathless. Claire still hadn't touched her. Or needed to. Ashley growled, lunged forward again, but Claire stepped inside her stance, placed 2 fingers lightly on Ashley's gi, and guided her off balance in one smooth pivot. Ashley stumbled, not hard. Not humiliating, but enough to make the crowd go still. This wasn't normal. Brad called it off. Switch partners. Claire returned to the edge of the mat, seemingly indifferent. She sat cross-legged, closing her eyes for a moment, breathing evenly, quietly. But now, whispers moved like wind around the room. She didn't fight. She didn't need to fight. Who is she? Mike Larkin, the self-declared strongest brown belt in the room, scoffed and cracked his knuckles. Beginner's luck. Let me have a go. Claire looked up, her expression unreadable. Brad smirked. By all means. Mike strutted forward, full of swagger. A 6-foot wall of overconfidence, high on muscle and low on humility. All right, Claire, let's dance. They squared up again. This time, the crowd circled naturally, tighter. Phones weren't out, but eyes were locked in. Claire's stance was different now, slightly lower, 1 foot angled perfectly. Her hands, relaxed but poised. Her chin tucked, shoulders loose. Those who knew better suddenly leaned forward. Something was happening. Mike rushed her with a heavy right hook. Claire didn't block. She tilted. The punch whistled past her ear. Her hand flicked up, not a strike, just a redirection. Mike's arm swung past her, pulling his torso forward. Claire's body shifted an inch, maybe less. Her elbow tapped his ribs. Soft, gentle. But Mike dropped to one knee like a puppet whose strings had been cut. His breath vanished. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The room gasped. Brad stepped forward, face pale. Claire? What was that? She stood calmly. A warning. Brad blinked. A warning? Claire didn't explain. She didn't have to. Because suddenly, it wasn't funny anymore. The jokes had stopped. The mocking looks were gone. In their place was something Brad hadn't seen in this dojo in a long time. Respect. And fear. The students looked at her differently now, not as an intruder or a joke but as a mystery, a puzzle wrapped in faded fabric and soft words. Ashley sat on the bench, wide-eyed. Mike, still trying to catch his breath, looked up like he'd seen a ghost. Brad clapped again, forcing composure. That's enough for today. Dismissed. The class began filing out. Claire was the last to leave. As she stepped into the cold night air, something shifted in her expression. Her eyes softened, just slightly. She exhaled, not in relief, but release. She hadn't wanted to do that, but it had been necessary. Not to prove anything to them. To herself. Back at her small apartment, Claire walked past the bookshelf-lined walls, past the silent kettle, and into her bedroom. From the closet, she pulled out a wooden box, the same one she hadn't opened in over a decade. Inside lay 5 folded black belts, each embroidered with a different name. Her real name, Elena Cross. Not Claire Bennett. Not librarian. Not nobody. She touched the belts gently, one by one. Muay Thai. Shotokan. Krav Maga. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Taekwondo. Each one earned, each one soaked in 1,000 hours of sweat and sacrifice. She picked up a faded photo of her and her old mentor, Master James Crawford, standing in front of a small Texas dojo. She was just 17 in the picture, smiling. Alive. He was gone now. So was everything she once was. But maybe, just maybe, something still remained. The next class wasn't on the schedule. It wasn't part of the beginner's course or any regular rotation, but word had spread fast. By the time Claire stepped into Yamamoto Dojo 2 nights later, the floor was packed. Not just with students, but with visitors, former members, curious onlookers, even a few instructors from nearby gyms. All there for one reason: to see what she would do next. Claire walked in just as she had before, quiet, respectful, alone. But everything about her posture had changed. No longer hunched or hesitant, her shoulders were square, her eyes lifted. There was still no makeup, no flashy gi, no attempt to impress. Just presence. Brad greeted her this time with forced confidence and a too big smile. Well, well, look who's back. Ready to show off again? She tilted her head. I came to train. That silenced him. He glanced around, suddenly aware that half the room was watching not him, but her. All right, fine, he said, trying to sound in control. Let's give everyone a little show, yeah? Ashley, you're up. Ashley Monroe, now noticeably less cocky, stepped onto the mat with a nervous laugh. I'll be gentle, she said, half joke, half hope. Claire didn't answer. She just bowed. And then it began. The moment Ashley moved, the room felt it. Claire didn't block. She guided. She didn't strike. She disarmed. Every movement was poetry in motion fluid, precise, inevitable. Within seconds, Ashley found herself spinning, then grounded, not hurt, but outmatched so completely it made her cheeks burn red. The dojo was dead silent. Claire stepped back, bowed again, and helped Ashley up with quiet grace. Brad laughed uncomfortably. All right, that's enough. She got lucky again. Mike, take her down for real. Mike hesitated. He still remembered the pain, the elbow that had touched him like a whisper and folded him like a lawn chair. But pride is a stubborn thing, and ego is even louder when people are watching. He stepped forward. Claire sighed softly. This wasn't about them anymore, not about revenge or humiliation. This was about truth. Mike swung a wild haymaker. Claire didn't step back. She stepped in. Her palm met his chest. A soft sound, like a door closing. Mike hit the floor with a loud thud and didn't get up. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, That wasn't even a real strike. Exactly, someone else murmured. She's toying with them. Brad's smile broke entirely. His cheeks flushed with frustration and fear. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You think you're better than all of us. Claire turned to him slowly. I don't think that. I know what it takes to earn a belt, and what it means when someone wears one they haven't earned. Brad bristled. You want to challenge me? Fine. Let's go. 1-on-1. Number. Her voice was calm. Still. You're not ready. That broke him. Everyone, he shouted, voice cracking. All together. Take her down. 5 students jumped in immediate brown belts, all strong, fast, aggressive. But they never touched her. Claire flowed between them like wind through trees, a sidestep here, a sweep there, a redirection that sent one spinning into another. The choreography looked unreal, almost like theater. But the groans from the mat said otherwise. 10 seconds, that's all it took. Fensolence. Brad stood at the edge, frozen. His mouth moved, but no sound came. Then it happened. A voice from the back spoke, soft but stunned. "Oh my God, I've seen this before." Everyone turned. It was Mr. Tennyson, an older black belt who'd trained in Vegas back in the day. He stepped forward slowly, staring at Claire like he was seeing a ghost. "That movement," he whispered, "the circular redirection, the open palm takedown, the breath control, the bow." He pointed, voice shaking. "That's cross-style. That's Thunderhand's technique." A murmur swept the room like wind through grass. Thunderhand. The name that had haunted underground fighting circuits for a decade. The woman who never lost. The one who dismantled the Romanov crime family's entire Nevada operation with her bare hands. "That can't be," Rad said, stepping back. Claire looked up, meeting every eye in the room. Then, slowly, she pulled back the sleeve of her sweatshirt. There, on her left forearm, was a small, distinct tattoo. A lightning-wrapped fist. The symbol of Thunderhand. Gasps turned to disbelief, then awe, then silence. "Elena Cross," someone whispered. Brad dropped to his knees, staring. "You're supposed to be dead. They said you burned in a fire 10 years ago." Claire Elena did once. "I did, just not in the way you think." She looked around at the stunned faces, her voice carrying without needing to rise. Elena Cross died when the people she loved were murdered because of who she was. She vanished because being powerful meant putting a target on innocent backs. She didn't want revenge, she wanted peace. She paused. But peace doesn't last when people turn martial arts into ego, when they mock what they don't understand, when they teach violence without discipline. Brad trembled. We didn't know." "You didn't care," Elena said quietly, "until you were embarrassed." Ashley began to cry. "We're sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "We didn't know. We were awful." "You weren't monsters," Elena said gently. "You were ignorant, arrogant. That can be unlearned." Then she turned to the whole dojo. "But now you do know, so what will you choose to be tomorrow?" And with that, she stepped back from the center. Not triumphant, not angry, just finished. The students looked to Brad, and slowly one by one they began to untie their belts. Brown, black, even red. They laid them at her feet. Not to honor her, but to start over. For a long moment, no one moved. The dojo stood frozen, a sea of bowed heads and belts lying in quiet surrender on the mat. Not out of defeat, but out of awakening, out of something deeper than shame. It was reverence. Claire Elena stood, in the center of it all, unmoved, her expression unreadable. But inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not power, not pride. Peace. Brad finally found his voice, shaky, honest. "Thunderhand-sensei, we don't deserve to ask, but would you teach us?" His black beltons worn with swagger now rested in his palms, arms extended. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't even a plea. It was an offering. All eyes turned to her. Some were wide with hope, others with tears. She looked down at the belts on the floor. So many of them had been chasing status, chasing validation, and in doing so, they'd forgotten what martial arts was supposed to be. Not showmanship, but service. Not ego, but ethics. She could have walked away, left them to sit in the silence of their guilt, and maybe, years ago, Elena would have, when her heart still burned from betrayal, from loss, when she believed strength only brought suffering. But now, she knelt slowly and picked up one belt not to claim it, but to fold it gently. "No one can teach until they've learned to listen," she said. "I'm not here to be a master. I'm just someone who forgot who she was and remembered too late." Ashley Monroe stepped forward. "But maybe you could help us remember too." Elena met her eyes. Ashley's weren't defiant anymore. They were wide and raw, the way a student's eyes should be. Elena nodded once. "I can come once a week," she said softly. "As a volunteer, I'll teach anyone who comes here seeking strength, not superiority, discipline, not domination. A quiet ripple moved through the room. A few students wiped their faces. Others bowed, deeper than before. It was a beginning, not a performance, but a promise. As Alina turned to leave, Brad called after her, voice thick with emotion. Why now? Why come back at all? She stopped at the door, then turned. There's a girl I passed on the street, she said. Maybe 12. She was being cornered by older boys. She didn't cry. She didn't fight. She just froze. The room hung on her words. I stopped them without a punch, but after, I asked her if she'd ever thought of learning self-defense. She nodded. Then she asked me if it was safe. Elena looked around, and I didn't know how to answer. Now she did. She pushed open the door. Outside, snow had started falling, again soft flakes catching the streetlight glow. The world was quiet in that beautiful way winter makes possible. As she walked, each step felt lighter than the last. Not because the weight was gone, but because it had finally found a place to rest. The next morning, Elena was back in her apartment books, shelved, kettle boiling, windows fogged from the cold. But this time, something new sat on her coffee table. The folded black hair tie that Master Crawford had given her before her first tournament. For luck, he had said. And perhaps, for the first time, she believed in that luck again. At 11 a.m., her phone buzzed. A message from Ashley. She came. The girl you told us about. She's here. Elena smiled, tied back her hair, and grabbed her coat. When she entered the dojo later that afternoon, it was no longer the place of mockery she had first encountered. Students were stretching in respectful silence. Brad was sweeping the mat himself. Ashley was helping a nervous young girl tighten her gi. And that girl, wide-eyed, still trembling, looked up when Elena entered. Elena nodded once. Welcome. That evening, back in her apartment, Elena sat in her reading chair with a cup of green tea in hand and a worn photo resting on the table beside her. Daniel's smile stared back at her, forever caught in the glow of a San Diego sunset. I kept my promise, she whispered. I didn't come back for vengeance. I came back to make it mean something. She looked out the window as the snow began to fall again, blanketing the city like a clean slate. Some battles, she thought, are not meant to be fought with fists, but with the quiet certainty of doing what's right. Not all heroes need applause. Some just need a dojo that remembers what honor feels like. If you were her, would you have revealed yourself? Would you have stepped back into the world that once destroyed everything you loved just to protect a stranger? Or would you have stayed in hiding, knowing that your silence kept others safe? Let us know in the comments below. Because sometimes the smallest choice can reignite a legend.